Joseph Smith's prohibition against seeing the gold plates naturally aroused suspicion. Among the skeptics was Martin Harris's wife, Lucy. To allay her fears and satisfy himself more fully as to the reality of Joseph Smith's claims, Harris took a specimen of characters Smith allegedly copied from the plates and showed them to the learned for an opinion regarding their authenticity. Since the plates are not available for examination, this specimen of characters is the closest we will ever come to testing Joseph Smith's claim of having translated the Book of Mormon from anciently engraved gold plates. Indeed, are these characters traceable to any ancient language? Or are they the product of Joseph Smith's imagination? Hi, I'm Dan Vogel, and I hope you'll join me in discussing what we know about these mysterious characters and what they might mean to Joseph Smith's claims. In 1834, Columbia University's professor of classics, Charles Anthon, remembered that the facsimile of characters he was shown consisted of all kinds of crooked characters disposed in columns, Greek and Hebrew letters, crosses and flourishes, Roman letters inverted or placed sideways, and the whole ended in a rude delineation of a circle divided into various compartments, decked with various strange marks. He could not say if the characters had been deliberately obscured or poorly copied, but surmised that the facsimile had evidently been prepared by some person who had before him at the time a book containing various alphabets, and that the curious circle had been evidently copied after the Mexican calendar given by Humboldt, but copied in such a way as not to betray the source whence it was derived. Here, Anthon references the works of German explorer Alexander von Humboldt. The Mexican calendar appeared in his 2-volume Researches Concerning the Institutions and Monuments of the Ancient Inhabitants of America, published in London in 1814. The Mexican calendar appeared opposite page 276 in Volume 1. In 1841, Anthon gave this description. The characters were arranged in columns, like the Chinese mode of writing, and presented the most singular medley that I had ever beheld. Greek, Hebrew, and all sorts of letters, more or less distorted, either through unskillfulness or from actual design, were intermingled with sundry delineations of half-moons, stars, and other natural objects, and the whole ended in a rude representation of the Mexican zodiac. The sample of characters Joseph Smith prepared and sent with Martin Harris is evidently no longer extant. However, what is believed to be a copy of some of the characters Joseph Smith prepared has survived and is presently in the archives of the Community of Christ, formerly the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in Independence, Missouri. The church acquired this singular document in 1903 from the family of Book of Mormon witness David Whitmer, who exhibited it on many occasions and represented it as the characters that Martin Harris took to Professor Anthon. With slight variation, characters from the first 3 lines were published on the 21st of December 1844 in a Mormon periodical in New York City called The Prophet, claiming to be a correct copy of the characters taken from the plates the Book of Mormon was translated from, the same that was taken to Professor Mitchell, and afterwards to Professor Anthon. About the same time, they appeared on this black and gold placard. Considering David Whitmer was out of the church and living in Missouri at this time, it is likely that the publication of these characters came from an independent source. The 7 lines of about 225 characters are written on a sheet of paper measuring approximately 8 by 3 1/4 inches. At the top of the document is written characters, misspelled. A recently discovered photograph of this document in the Clay County, Missouri Historical Society, possibly dating to the late 1860s, reveals that the Whitmer document was once attached to what appears to be a fool's cap sheet of paper, with the partly visible title, The Book of the Generations of Adam. This title likely accompanied a portion of Joseph Smith's Bible revision, where it says, "Now this prophecy Adam spake as he was moved upon by the Holy Ghost, and a genealogy was kept of the children of God, and this was the book of the generations of Adam." The portion of Joseph Smith's Bible revision which contains this passage was dictated to John Whitmer, who acted as scribe, on the 30th of November, 1830. The word characters, once thought to be in the handwriting of Joseph Smith, is now, with the aid of additional words and context, believed to be in the handwriting of either John or Christian Whitmer. Analysis of the ink by X-ray fluorescence shows that both the heading and the characters were written at the same time, probably by the same person. This means that this sheet was not the one taken to the learned by Martin Harris in February 1828, but is a copy made by one of the Whitmers. It also means that it cannot be used to dispute Anthon's description of what he was shown. Anthon's description of a circle divided into various compartments, decked with various strange marks, seems supported by an unidentified informant who told Orsimus Turner that upon returning to Palmyra, Martin Harris exhibited the manuscript title page of the Book of Mormon and remembered that it contained concentric circles between, above, and below which were characters. How the 7 lines of characters relate to what Anthon saw is uncertain. In his 1838 history, remember, Joseph Smith said, "Immediately after my arrival in Harmony, I commenced copying the characters off the plates. I copied a considerable number of them, which I did between the time I arrived at the house of my wife's father in the month of December 1827 and the February following." It seems probable, therefore, that Smith had prepared multiple versions of his Book of Mormon characters, and that what was taken to Anthon was only a sample of a larger group of documents. Among the holdings of the LDS Church archives is an undated page in Oliver Cowdery's handwriting that bears 4 symbols not present on the Whitmer document, and written above them is, "The Book of Mormon, the Interpretation of Languages." When this was copied by Frederick G. Williams in Ohio, probably sometime between November 1830 and August 1831, he added, above that, "Characters on the Book of Mormon." The Reverend John A. Clark of Palmyra said Harris visited him shortly after his trip to the East and pulled from his pocket a folded slip of paper that contained 3 or 4 lines of characters. This was probably the source of the Whitmer document, at least the top 4 lines, as well as what was published in The Prophet in 1844 and the gold and black placard. Indeed, the top 4 lines are written larger than the bottom 3, and the 4th line leaves room for 2 or 3 more characters, which may indicate that the 2 parts were copied from 2 sources. Noting that the bottom 3 lines are smaller and apparently divided into groupings of characters by dashes, researchers Brent and Aaron Metcalf speculate that they may have come from the circle divided into compartments spoken of by Anthon. Anthon was certain the document contained anything but Egyptian hieroglyphics, which is what Howe evidently told him the Mormons were claiming. There were three kinds of Egyptian writing: hieroglyphic, hieratic, and demotic. Of course, the Whitmer characters bear no resemblance to Egyptian hieroglyphics. However, Mormon scholars have made comparisons between the Whitmer characters and hieratic and demotic. In 1942, Mormon researcher Ariel L. Crowley found 97 of the 225 characters on the Whitmer document were similar to Demotic Egyptian. Concerning this effort, Mormon scholar Stanley Kimball observed, "Honorable as such attempts are, and fascinating though they may be, the net result is generally a striking comparison of the similar characters and an ignoring of the dissimilar characters. By this very method, it may be proved that we speak Russian in this country." A closer look at Crowley's examples, which are taken from sources spanning many centuries, shows that while some present interesting parallels, many others are either unremarkably simple or require a great deal of imagination to see any similarity. One of Crowley's examples is even upside down. Despite such vague comparisons, the verdict of Egyptologists has been decidedly in the negative. In 1956, Paul M. Hansen, an apostle of the RLDS Church, sought the opinion of renowned Egyptologist Alan H. Gardiner of New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art. Gardiner responded, "I see no resemblance between the characters of which you sent me a photograph and any form of Egyptian writing." Hansen also obtained a statement from John A. Wilson, professor of Egyptology at the University of Chicago, who emphatically stated, "This is not Egyptian writing, as known to the Egyptologist." Wilson then elaborated, "It obviously is not hieroglyphic, nor the cursive hieroglyphic as used in the Book of the Dead, nor does it belong to one of the cursive stages of ancient Egyptian writing, hieratic, abnormal hieratic, or demotic. It fails to conform to the normal pattern of cursive writings in which the pen remains on the papyrus to join together individual characters into groups, such as syllables or words. The characters in this specimen stand suspiciously separated from each other." Edward H. Ashmont, who studied Egyptology at the University of Chicago, said, "These Book of Mormon figures cannot be identified as Egyptian hieroglyphic, hieratic, or demotic." Elsewhere, Ashmont reported, "The characters on the Anthon transcript are not thus recognizable. The author has studied them with one of the world's foremost demoticists. They have resisted decipherment as demotic and stand just as little chance of representing earlier forms of ancient Egyptian." At various times, the characters on the Whitmer copy have been compared to Latin shorthand with 31 examples, Micmac Indian hieroglyphs with 18 examples, deformed English with 36 examples, and secret occult magic characters with 49 examples. It should be clear from these examples that comparing the Book of Mormon characters to the characters of known ancient or modern languages can be a game of cherry-picking. Any attempt to find the source of Joseph Smith's characters should therefore be approached with caution. What about Anthon's suggestion that Joseph Smith used a book containing various alphabets? It evidently did not occur to Harris that if the learned could verify the authenticity of the characters, Joseph Smith could have created them by the same means. It would explain why the characters appear separated and aren't grouped into words. However, there are no striking similarities between the Whitmer document and any ancient language that would compel us to conclude Smith needed such a book. Indeed, comparison of the Book of Mormon characters with the other languages Smith attributed to Anthon is not impressive. However, it might be instructive to review what Anthon might have seen as disguised versions of those languages. There were indeed books containing samples of ancient alphabets, which were more likely to be available to Anthon rather than Smith. One of these books is particularly interesting. In A Discourse of the Diversity of Letters Used by the Diverse Nations of the World, published in London in 1625, English scholar Samuel Purchas provided the following tables. Especially noteworthy are 3. An old magic alphabet of Honorius Thebanus, of which there are other kinds too many. 8. The Assyrian, ascribed to Abraham. Note that it is not the expected Akkadian cuneiform. Here on this page is 18 and 19, running or fast hand, with Cicero's and Cyprian's notes. This is the Latin shorthand previously mentioned. And below, 20, 21, and 22 are cabalistical alphabets attributed, one to the angel Raphael, the next to Enoch, the third to Abraham. 28. The Chaldean of Abraham, that also varied by others. Remember, Smith claimed Anthon had said the facsimile he was shown contained, in addition to Egyptian, Chaldaic. Here, I am using Edmund Fry's Pantographia, containing accurate copies of all the known alphabets in the world. London, 1799. Pages 28 through 38, which gives 18 examples of the Chaldean alphabet. While there are some comparisons of simple characters, there is nothing particularly compelling. On the right side of the screen, I have isolated some of the Chaldean characters and placed similar characters from the Whitmer document next to each of them on the right. Next, Joseph Smith mentioned a Syriac, also known as Akkadian, which used cuneiform characters. Fry doesn't have cuneiform in his collection of alphabets. In fact, pre-1828 samples of cuneiform are hard to come by, but this is how that alphabet looks. Again, there is very little to recommend it, although he might have seen these characters from the Whitmer document as cuneiform-like. And finally, Arabic, which again is largely unremarkable. We should also test Anthon's description, although we don't know how the Whitmer document relates to what he had seen. There are certainly all kinds of crooked characters, but no obvious half-moons, stars, and other natural objects. But what about Greek and Hebrew letters, crosses and flourishes, Roman letters inverted or placed sideways? Here is a comparison to the Greek alphabet using Fry's 1799 book, which gives 39 samples of Greek script. To avoid repetition, I give only a sampling of the most significant parallels. Again, Greek is on the left and Book of Mormon on the right. Interesting, but not terribly impressive. Fry gives 10 examples of Hebrew script. but nothing noteworthy here. By flourishes, Anthon probably meant characters that were invented, of which there are plenty of examples. And by crosses, he perhaps saw something like these examples. By Roman or Latin letters, inverted or placed sideways, Anthon evidently referred to what others have called deformed English. Unlike previous comparisons, this category is plentiful. Charles A. Shook was one of the first to make a visual comparison of 36 characters, which appeared in his 1910 book, Camorra Revisited. Here is my own comparison. I have added Q and Z based on 19th century handwriting. Compare Q with samples of Willard Richards and James Mulholland's handwriting, and Z with Louis Zabrinsky's signature. The alphabet accounts for 104 characters. Even more impressive are numbers. Numbers account for 39 characters. Shook included punctuation marks and other familiar signs. Altogether, the deformed English theory accounts for 151 characters, or 67% of the total. At this point, it is important to observe that we are not comparing what Anthon saw. What Anthon saw may very well have been very different from what we see in the Whitmer document. According to Anthon, the document he saw ended with a rude representation of the Mexican zodiac, or Mexican calendar given by Humboldt, but copied in such a way as not to betray the source whence it was derived. However, Humboldt's calendar was probably not the source for what Anthon had seen. The probable source was much closer to Joseph Smith's world than to Anthon's. Rather than a disguised Mexican zodiac, the circle was likely a version of a magic circle or seal or talisman, similar to what appears on one of the magic parchments handed down in the Hiram Smith family. This parchment, available only in photocopy, is used for the invocation of good spirits, and is called the Holiness to the Lord parchment, or layman, because those words are written on 3 of its 4 gold-leafed borders. On the 4th edge are 3 Hebrew characters representing Jehovah, written 3 times. While this document bears several common magical emblems, together with various astrological signs and magical characters, slight variations indicate that these circles were copied from Ebenezer Sibley's 1784 book, a new and complete illustration of occult sciences. This comparison of Sibley's circles on the left and the Smith parchment on the right is taken from D. Michael Quinn's path-breaking book, Early Mormonism and the Magic World View. I'm not suggesting that Joseph Smith copied one of these circles, or that he copied any magic circle for that matter. Although there were a great variety of magic circles from which Smith could draw, I am unable to claim that Smith plagiarized the one he sent to Anthon. He may have very well created his own seal, or talisman, drawing on his experience as a treasure seer and practitioner of ceremonial magic. It fits with the occult context of discovering the plates and his encounters with the spirit guardian, who was later named Moroni or Nephi. If this seal, composed of concentric circles bearing strange characters, was taken from the manuscript title page as one witness reported, and appeared at the bottom of the page as Anthon reported, Smith might have intended it as the ancient author's seal, or one that the author added for protection of the plates. The following are talismans taken from Arthur Edward Waite's book, The Book of Ceremonial Magic Illustrated, London, 1913, originally called The Book of Black Magic and of Pacts, published in 1898. This was a compilation from earlier sources, predating Joseph Smith's composition of the Book of Mormon characters. Waite took these talismans from an old book of magic called The Black Pullet, which is believed to have been written in the 18th century in France. This seal appeared in the well-known Grimoire of Pope Honorius, first published in Paris, probably in 1810. These seals or talismans appeared in Francis Barrett's famous book, The Magus, London, 1801. These seals appeared in another well-known magical text called Archidoxus Magicae, which was attributed to Paracelsus and translated into English by Robert Turner in 1656. Note that these seals and talismans bear various magical, Greek, and Hebrew characters, and therefore may have been possible sources for the array of characters Anthon said he saw. The Hiram Smith magic parchment also bears Hebrew characters, and a thrice repeated inscription in what has been described as a magic alphabet or code by D. Michael Quinn, which, like the Book of Mormon characters, has yet to be deciphered. In fact, I have been unable to find them in any magical alphabet. They do not even show up in Fred Getting's Dictionary of Occult, Hermetic, and Alchemical Sigils, which presents under 1,500 headings the meanings of over 9,000 sigils, which appear in European, alchemical, astrological, geomantic, and related Hermetic sources. However, excluded from Getting's collection are meaningless or invented characters. As he explains, I have avoided also recording protective sigils, such as talismans used to ward off the evil eye, and those designed to attract beneficent forces or spirits. The majority of these sigils are the equivalent of emotional doodles, with none of the cosmic significance of true occult sigils, and do not express a clear meaning. Some of the characters on the Smith parchment have a Greek-like quality, but they are also similar to some characters on the Whitmer document. The important thing to notice, though, is that like the Book of Mormon characters, these magical characters have no meaning and may very well be unique to Smith. In fact, as Gettings noted, there is a tradition in magic of inventing characters that have no real alphabetic quality or meaning and categorizes them as personal and fanciful characters. We have already seen these meaningless doodles intermixed with Hebrew and Greek characters that appear on seals and talismans. But Anthon's statement that the characters from the two biblical languages were disguised or altered opens an interesting possibility for what Anthon had seen. One category of secret magical alphabets is derivative of Hebrew, Reformed Hebrew, as Joseph Smith might say. The same is true for Greek. Gettings categorizes secret scripts as follows: Hebraic, Greek and Roman, the personal, and the random ciphers. Francis Barrett's book, The Magus, published in 1801, included this plate containing several magic alphabets. Particularly interesting are the second and third alphabets, the characters of celestial writing, and the writing called Malachim, meaning angels, both derived or bowdlerized from Hebrew and Greek script by Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa in the 16th century. Barrett also describes a very special category of characters. There is another kind of character received by revelation only, which can be found out no other way, the virtue of which characters is from the deity revealing. The following are samples of meaningless magic characters, or what Giddings called personal and fanciful doodles, culled from various occult sources. The first are from Francis Barrett's The Magus. Characters of good spirits on the left and bad on the right. Here is a table showing the names of the angels governing the 7 days of the week, with their sigils, planets, signs, etc. Here, from Henry Cornelius Agrippa's 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, 1651, are letters or characters for the 7 planets. Waite's Book of Black Magic and Pacts, 1898, compiles many examples of meaningless characters. Another magical script was developed by occultist Dr. John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's scientific advisor, and his associate, Sir Edward Kelly. Through use of a seer stone or crystal in the early 1580s, Kelly claimed to have contact with angels, whom he said dictated several books to him in a special angelic or Enochian language. Dee claimed it was the language of God, angels, and Adam, but was lost after Enoch was taken to heaven. To this collection of invented and untranslatable characters, we should probably add the characters and seal Joseph Smith sent to Anthon, as well as the characters on the Whitmer document. An interesting study of the Book of Mormon characters was performed by A.C. Lambert, who served as a professor of education and educational administration at Brigham Young University, and various administrative positions for Los Angeles State College, and yet managed to carry out extensive studies of early Mormon history. One such study was on the relationship of the Book of Mormon characters to secret or magical alphabets in occult books. This is a page from that study, taken from his papers in the special collections of the Marriott Library at the University of Utah, Salt Lake City, with the title Characters from Gold Plates of the Book of Mormon, and Characters from Secret Books for Finding Treasures and Controlling Spirits. Using Arthur Edward Waite's The Book of Ceremonial Magic Illustrated, London 1913, Lambert parsed out 48 Book of Mormon characters and organized them into groups of similar types, and then compared these groups to groupings of similar characters from occult books. One of the most interesting comparisons was to this group of characters that have a series of 4 or 9 short vertical lines. Nevertheless, Lambert's study is not any better than Crowley's for Demotic Egyptian. However, the failure to decisively identify a source for Joseph Smith's characters is to be expected. The Book of Mormon itself warns against such activity. As Moroni declares, "We have written this record according to our knowledge, in the characters which are called among us the Reformed Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us. The Hebrew hath been altered by us also. And also none other people knoweth our language. Therefore the Lord hath prepared means for the interpretation thereof." Clearly, Joseph Smith knew his characters were unique and therefore untranslatable.